Throughout time, roller coasters have come and gone. Only some become legends for their intensity and thrills. Each and every year, coaster fans like you venture to the parks, searching for that one special ride that stands out above the rest. You submitted your rankings, and now it's time to reveal the group of elite roller coasters that you have voted as the best of the best. COASTER-net Uncut is proud to present the 2019 Thrilling 32.
Why are you here?
Well, Daddy, my name is Darkside Dick, and I'm here to act like a complete idiot.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's Darkside Dick looks like a complete idiot so far here in the Thrilling 32 in 123rd place out of 135. No, he would not even dare show his face here. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Final Four, the second to last round of the Thrilling 32 here. I am Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York, alongside Andrea Barczyk, not Darkside Dick.
Not Darkside Dick. That
From Chicago, Illinois.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go watch the last Ride Warrior Wrestling show. You'll find all about that idiot. And he's apparently in this Thrilling 32 poll, too.
He submitted a bracket, and he picked Phoenix to win in both the wood and the steel.
Of course. You know, Darkside Dick, long time nuisance to our show here from the very start. Can't get rid of this guy, but I'm going to get rid of him pretty soon here when we're going to have a match. I don't know if you heard, Danny. We're having an official wrestling match between me and Darkside Dick. So, you know, I might even bring the Thrilling 32 belt with me and put it on the line. Yeah.
Oh! Look at that. Now not to get sidetracked here, but I mean, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter show because we've only got 4 matchups. Next week is the championship. We'll find out our winners. We'll find out the full rankings. We'll find out who wins the contest. So let's get sidetracked here for just a minute. For those who do not know, your former name on the old COASTER-net forums and the Hisber as
HSBR.
As Aunt Sue once said, the Hisber. What the hell is the Hisber? The Hisber is the HSBR is a wrestling reference.
Yeah, I used to wrestle back in the day, so Darkside Dick issued the challenge, called you out too. I don't know if you saw that, but said you're a bit of a pansy as well. So
I'm not worried about what he said. He's in 123rd place.
Obviously doesn't know coasters. Hopefully he doesn't know wrestling moves too, and I'll just walk all over the place with him.
Stick to wrestling there, Darkside. Anyways, so Andy, tonight... That's right. Tonight we narrow down the Final Four wood and the Final Four steel to 2 of each, and to our 2 finalists, and we'll find out who will battle it out next week for the title of champion, and either to retain, possibly, or to take over a spot on the championship belt, which you displayed earlier. You got it again right there.
Let's have it out there, Look at that. Oh. So we're starting with the wood first, though, right? You said?
Yeah, we're going to start with the wood first. Voyage is still there, but we've got Voyage in the first matchup here. Voyage from Holiday World going up against the Phoenix from Knoebels. And, the Voyage, the defending champion of the Thrilling 32 here in the Ride Warrior Choice Awards. Phoenix, the Golden Ticket Award winner from this past season. So I guess 2 of, dare I say, 2 of the most well-known roller coaster polls done out there. The 2 most recent champions, I guess you could say, Voyage from last year and this one, and then this year from the Golden Ticket Awards going head-to-head. And, some people do have Phoenix selected as their champion, and a lot of people have Voyage selected as their champion. So there are ramifications to the bracket contest as well coming out of this one right here.
Well, we know one big idiot has Phoenix selected, and we know one big idiot. But Danny, as much as I like Phoenix, and I do like Phoenix, it's the bright spot in a dark forest known as Knoebels, in my opinion. You're a big Knobles fan. I am not, if you haven't watched the show ever.
Now, Knobles is great, but Phoenix is by far the crown jewel.
Phoenix, everyone can agree on. That Phoenix is by far the best coaster at Knobles. So, but when it's going up against the Voyage, current champion, long time Final Four contender, one of those coasters that is just outstanding. You say that there's no comparison anywhere in the world to any other ride. I think Phoenix has had a nice run. It has a run into the Final Four, but I think this is where we bid Darkside Dick and Phoenix adieu.
It may be. And I think, personally, any ride other than Voyage, I might feel like Phoenix should be favored to move on based on everything else we know now. Lightning Rod's over on the other side. Not quite sure, what's going to come to be. We know it beat Outlaw Run. We don't know where it really came in. I mean, for all we know, Voyage could be the champion again, and El Toro could have been number 2. For all we know, that's a real possibility here. The way that this tournament happens to work out every year, it is possible that you don't end up with the number 1 and 2, 3, and 4 in your Final Four. It's a distinct possibility. So I don't know. I feel like I would feel pretty good about Phoenix if it was playing any ride other than Voyage.
And that's the problem, is that it is playing Voyage, and I just don't see how Phoenix is going to beat Voyage.
Well, moving on to the championship matchup is the Voyage from Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana. Andy, you can keep the Voyage plate on there for at least one more week.
One more week.
Next week, we will find out for sure if it gets to stay on for another year, or if we'll have to unscrew it and put something else up there. We've got 2 contenders on the other side of the wood bracket. We've got really the Cinderella, and this has been the Cinderella ride for the last couple of years here. The coaster from Vancouver's PNE Playland, surprise champion out of that region there, knocking off Prowler, knocking off Boulder Dash, and getting to the Final Four here. But going up against Lightning Rod from Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. You and I kind of discussed this last week. The wood bracket was very, very difficult this year. Probably the most difficult it's ever been. And this might have been the first year in a number of years where the wood bracket was pretty convincingly more difficult than the steel bracket. There were a lot of easy matchups, a lot of people doing very well in the steel bracket overall. The wood bracket, like we said last week, not a single person had the entire wood Final Four correct. And very few people having all 8 of the round before correct. And a lot more variation in the champions. So generally, people had much more difficulty with the wood bracket. But through all of that, last week, after finding out the Final Four, you and I were in agreement that the championship matchup seemed pretty clear. Have your thoughts changed?
No, not at all. Coaster, as you said, a fine ride, a great ride. Final Four run, I think, awesome. That it was able to get this far. But Danny, as all Cinderellas, I think the clock is striking midnight here. And Lightning Rod is just, we saw Lightning Rod overcome that major RMC bracket, beat Outlaw Run. And to me, once it beat Outlaw Run, that was a clear move to the championship round after overcoming that obstacle. So nothing in my mind is saying right now that Coaster is going to overcome Lightning Rod.
Well, moving on to the championship to take on the Voyage will be Lightning Rod from Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Now, and this presents an interesting scenario here, because last year we saw Voyage and El Toro in the championship, 2017. 2 years ago, if you remember, El Toro knocked off Voyage in the Final Four, and our championship was Lightning Rod versus El Toro. Lightning Rod was the number 1, El Toro was number 2, and Voyage actually came in at number 3 that year. So what we're actually presented with right here now, believe it or not, is the first time we're seeing Voyage and Lightning Rod go head to head. We have not seen it.
And that's interesting because this is a matchup. This is one that I am not confident in at all. That when you start breaking this down, Voyage has always had its fans. Voyage has always had its detractors. We've seen Lightning Rod win before. We know that we've never had a back-to-back, champion.
And that's what makes this very, very interesting.
And we know that Lightning Rod just won, a couple of years ago. So you're not talking about, this isn't like a Boulder Dash situation where, Boulder Dash won, 5-6 years ago and it's fallen off the rankings. People are still getting to Dollywood. People are still riding well if they can.
These are the two most recent champions. Just like we have coming up in the Steel, we're going to have Fury 325 against Expedition G-Force coming up here in our next matchup we talk about. That is the battle of the two most recent champions, and we have that in the finals now of the Wood bracket.
Yeah, and that's what makes this so difficult to choose. And it's also difficult to choose because they're two completely different coasters. Now, luckily, I have the ability to rank completely different coasters. I don't not have that skill. I have that skill when I can.
Intelligent coaster folks can do such a thing.
Yes, can compare two different things. That's what we do in life: is compare two very different things and try to say which one is better. So the question is are these two rides that are so different from each other? I personally think that Voyage, and this is how I think in my mind, Voyage has a lot less flaws in it than does Lightning Rod. The problem is Lightning Rod's last half is so out of this world amazing. That first half is good. It's some people say it's underwhelming. I say it's good enough.
I think it's good. I would even say very good.
I don't think it's anything spectacular. It does what it's supposed to do, but that second half is just this out of this world amazing. Voyage, you could say the same thing maybe about Voyage's first half.
Yeah, you could.
The hills are really nice, maybe a little bit underwhelming, but once you hit that spaghetti bowl, like you're flying into the forest, you're doing things, and then you come off of that brake run and you're going faster than you were before, and then that whole second half is like you can't even breathe on it. It's so intense. So yes, Voyage has some flaws, but I think those flaws in Voyage's first half are a lot better than the flaws in Lightning Rod's first half. So that's why I got to give the edge to Voyage. That's why Voyage is still my number one wood rank coaster on my personal list.
And I think that's, you kind of had a knack during the throwdowns. You had a knack for finding similarities between rides that are not that similar. And I think that's a very good one you just made. Voyage and Lightning Rod are very similar in the sense that they are rides that pick up and get more intense as the ride goes on.
Yes.
And sort of saves its best for last. That is absolutely true with both of these. That being said, I think we like to talk about El Toro. My criticism of El Toro has always been it's the opposite. You start off with an amazing drop in 3 of the best airtime hills anywhere in the world, and then after that, you've really got one nice hill after that, and you've got a lot of garbage in there. You've got some turns that don't really do anything. They're twisty, turny, whatnot, but they're not like the Maverick or I-305 twisty turnies that really throw you out of your seat. You've got that nice crossover hill. You've got a speed hill that doesn't really do a heck of a lot. You've got a turnaround that's just kind of so-so. And there's Voyage and Lightning Rod have so few flaws, and I don't even know that you would say that they have flaws as much as
things that aren't perfect.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. And we're never going to come up with the perfect roller coaster, right? I don't. We've come very close. We've come very close.
I will say Steel Vengeance is as close as I've come, but the first drop is not perfect. The first drop leaves some to be desired there, I think.
Yeah, I think that you could argue that there are parts in rides like Steel Vengeance and Lightning Rod and Voyage that aren't perfect. But I think, those couple of rides are about as close as you can get in a lot of senses.
Yeah.
Is the launch on Lightning Rod maybe a little bit underwhelming? Maybe, if you want to say it is. Are those first couple hills on Voyage underwhelming? I wouldn't call them underwhelming. I would say, I would just think that those first couple hills on Voyage are the types of hills that you can get on other rides, like a Shivering Timbers, for example. The wave turn on Lightning Rod, you can get that on some other rides. Not a ton, but certainly things. The launch on Lightning Rod, you can get a launch like that really on some other rides. It's not a super intense launch. It is not the best part of the ride.
No.
In fact, it is maybe the weakest part of the ride, but the fact of the matter is that both of those rides, Voyage and Lightning Rod, pick up their intensity so much and get so much better as you go along. And as you like to say, in a way, they tell a story, even though there really isn't a story. There is a flow and a pace to them that a lot of other rides
tells a story. That Voyage, when you think of the voyage over for the Pilgrims, it's going to start out real easy, right? And then when you hit mid-sea, you're going to get a little rougher. And it's going to get a little windy. It's going to get a little rainy out there. And then finally...
And not everyone's going to survive in one piece.
No, and you finally, when you hit those brakes, it's like hitting Plymouth Rock.
Yeah.
You ran right into it.
That's right. No, I think you're absolutely right there. So, good job out of you for coming up with a nice comparison there. And, we will see who wins. We've got lots and lots of people selecting Lightning Rod or Voyage. I think definitely El Toro had a lot of selections as well. I think, but Voyage and I didn't count how many people selected what ride, but Voyage and Lightning Rod seemed to be. Voyage was definitely the one picked most, and I would say Lightning Rod and El Toro were maybe an even split. So certainly two of the most popular champion choices here, and I don't think that was hard to come up with, but I think it was more difficult to decide who you want to win. So we will find out next week who is number one, what the final Wood rankings were, the top 50, and also everyone who got it right, and we'll finally get to the contest standings, but we've got to talk about the steel coasters now, and we start with something we alluded to a few minutes ago, Fury 325 from Carowinds against Expedition G-Force from Holiday Park in Germany, and this one here, again, a battle of the last two champions, including the defending champion, Fury 325, and Andy, this one has, initially on the surface, because so many people pick Steel Vengeance to win, you wouldn't think that this one has major contest implications. But it does, because currently the leader in the contest, who is my dad, has Expedition G-Force selected as his Steel champion. So this right here, and we talked about Rob Dole sitting down there in 26th, is the highest ranked person with Fury 325. So if Fury 325 were to go on and win, he would maybe have an advantage over all those other people sitting ahead of him in the standings. So this one, while on the surface, it looks like it may not matter because almost everyone is picking something on the other half of the bracket. This one has major implications on the contest winner as well.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing here is it's points. It's if one of these two rides wins over Steel Vengeance, there's that question mark as well, like you said. But out of the whole final four round here, this is the toughest matchup to pick because once again, we know the dominance of Fury over the last few seasons. However, we don't know how Steel Vengeance coming into people's rankings. Are they just going to simply move Fury down one? Does Expedition G4, do people start saying, well, Steel Vengeance is so, I know they're so different of coasters once again. People redo their whole top five and look at Expedition G-Force? And does that make maybe a slight movement up? Are there new voters here that we know Fury won by a good margin last year, but did we get more German voters, more voters who have been over to Expedition G-Force? It's going to be interesting to see next year, like you said, when you go on your famous trip to Europe, and how Expedition G-Force, plays into that. So maybe this isn't the year for Expedition G-Force to jump. Maybe that's next year. and maybe Fury just takes this one. I don't know, but this is of the Final Four. This is clearly the most difficult matchup to choose here. I'm still going to go with Fury because of its dominance last year that we've seen it win. So I'm going to say Fury, although I think moving forward, that may not be always the case here. I think next year's going to be a real interesting thing that happens. But this year, I think Fury still moves on.
All right. Well, Andy, you got the belt there, right?
I got the belt.
Let's see it.
Fury on the belt right there.
Fury's on the belt right now, right? You have it upside down there.
Yeah, look at that. Fury right there.
Fury. Well, Andy, that Fury badge can stay on for another week because Fury 325 is moving on to the finals. Fury 325 knocks off Expedition G-Force here and is going to the championship once again. So the defending champion is still defending. So we've got both of the defending champs back in the championship this year. They're both there. So the belt can stay as is for at least another week here. So now the contest is kind of wide open. All of a sudden, anyone's game here now. Now, had Expedition G-Force knocked off Fury, that really would have put my dad kind of in the catbird seat there because a lot of people picking Fury to beat G-Force in this matchup. But now that Fury's moved on, this is really, really opened up the game here.
Yeah, and so I still don't feel, I've said this from the start. I don't feel as if everyone who picks Steel Vengeance made a bad pick. So I think it makes a little bit of difference, and it might have some implications if some scenarios happen. But I still think it's going to come down to the wood side to determine who our champion of the Thrilling 32 bracket challenge is.
That's very possible. So, without further ado, let's see what Steel Vengeance has to say about all this. Going up against Terran from Fantasialand, obviously Steel Vengeance from Cedar Point. Terran again in the Final Four here, was in the Final Four last year, had a real nice run, not going all the way. But, two German coasters going up against two Cedar Fair coasters here in the Final Four. Any shot for Terran here?
Are you going to be on Terran on your trip? Is that in the plan to go to?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, it is.
So once again, I think it's the same scenario.
I think we can get back to that same refrain again.
Terran is I don't think Terran has a shot here at all. I think Expedition G-Force would have had a much better shot against Steel Vengeance, but that's not how the bracket lined up. Terran, I don't feel like it has that much of a shot at all here. Steel Vengeance moves on.
All right. Short and sweet from Andy Rabarchek there. So moving on to face Fury 325 in the Steel Championship this year will be Steel Vengeance from Cedar Point in Ohio, Sandusky, Ohio there. Steel Vengeance, one step away from taking away the Steel Crown from Fury 325 in its first year of operation. Andy, we talked about it from the very start. So many people on the Steel Vengeance bandwagon, full bore here. Yeah. The big decision was Fury 325 or Expedition G-Force, and lots of people going both ways on that. Very, very difficult over there. But again, to reiterate, you and me have been in agreement from the start that Steel Vengeance going to the finals was maybe the only way to try and do this.
Yeah, for me, Steel Vengeance is by far the best ride I've ever been on. I think it's better than Voyage. So for me, this would not have been hard to do. That Steel Vengeance clearly what I think is the epitome of a roller coaster. So, God bless, Rob Dole and his picking of Fury 325. But I don't know. This matchup, the Fury Steel Vengeance matchup, is an interesting one because once again, the question is how much did people love Steel Vengeance? How much and how many of them voted? Does it have enough to overtake Fury that we knew, Fury, when it won, was winning in unprecedented numbers, correct? That the gap between 1 and 2 was so far, a gap that we've never seen ever in the Steel Coaster ranking.
That first year, Fury 325 won by a large margin. The second year, when it was beaten by G-Force, it was the smallest margin in the history of the tournament. And then again, last year, it was very narrow. But that first year, Fury really ran away with it. And really, it's only been G-Force that has presented any sort of a challenge here. So that's something to consider here, to know now that Fury has beaten G-Force this year, knowing that no other coaster has really challenged Fury other than Expedition G-Force. That's really going to make the contest interesting if Fury ends up winning, because we've got so many people who pick Steel Vengeance. If Steel Vengeance ends up winning next week, then we've got, I would say 85%, maybe closer to 90% of the people who selected Steel Vengeance as the winner. So then, like you said, it is going to come down to the people who have the steel or the wood champion, correct? Because at this point, if Steel Vengeance wins, we're going to have many people, whether it's Voyage or Lightning Rod, that have both correct. If Fury ends up winning, then we could have multiple people. I'm scrolling down here. I see 1, 2, 3. I see 3 people in the entire pool of 135 that have Fury and Voyage. Only one person has Fury and Lightning Rod winning. That's Emmett 525252. So now that's down there in 36th place. I don't even know if that's enough to win the contest at this point. So would you like to take a look at the contest standings as they currently stand?
Yeah. Let's see how it's shaping out here.
All right. Well, so right now we'll start with the Danny Miller internal war that goes on here every year. So let's see. We got to find Aunt Sue, who is kind of right down there in the same spot. She's got 78 points down there in 112. My mom jumping down to 25th with 111 points. My mom had Expedition G-Force beating Fury in the finals. Now, she has Steel Vengeance as the Steel Champion, but not having Fury over G-Force bumps her down a little bit. Same thing with my dad. He drops down to 6th with G-Force going on. He's at 121 points. So actually, he is in 5th place right now. So he's got more picks correct. There's a tie for 5th there, but he has more picks correct. He is tied for the most number of picks correct at 55 with the person who is in 2nd place. So in 6th place is Owen Rahm. My dad's in 5th. In 4th, we have Jack Nueve, who's 122 points. He has Voyage and Steel Vengeance. Owen, who's in 6th, also has Voyage and Steel Vengeance. Andrew Heller in 3rd with 125 points. Andrew has Lightning Rod and Steel Vengeance. Gecko Hunter 2 with 127 points in 2nd with Lightning Rod and Steel Vengeance. And in 1st place with 128 points, alone in 1st place with Voyage and Steel Vengeance as the potential champions, is my brother Jackson. Moving up from 2nd to 1st.
Well, there you go. So one of your family members.
Yeah. Now here's the way it works. So we've got 4 different scenarios. Well, 4 on each finger, I guess. So 4 or on each hand. 4 scenarios that could play out here between the 4, the 2 rides on each side that we have left. And based on the way the standings currently are and who's picked what, there's only 2 possible winners. And it's between the 2 people in 1st and 2nd place. So basically, like you said here, because both of them have Steel Vengeance selected, the Steel winner has no bearing on who wins the contest at this point. Because
that's unusual.
That is very unusual. So here's how it works out. If Voyage wins, regardless of who the Steel winner is, Jackson wins. If Steel Vengeance is the Steel champion, it will be a new record of 164 points. If Fury wins the Steel, Jackson will still win, but with only 146 points. If Lightning Rod wins the Wood side, Gecko Hunter 2 will be our champion. If Fury wins the Steel, Gecko Hunter will have 145 points. If Steel Vengeance wins the Steel, that would also be a new record at only 163, though. So because Jackson's 1 point ahead right now, if Voyage and Steel Vengeance are the two winners, Jackson will win with 164 points. But again, the Steel champion is going to have no bearing on the winner of the contest. So as we predicted early on, the Wood champion is going to be the key here. So if Voyage wins Wood, Jackson wins. If Lightning Rod wins, Gecko Hunter 2 will win the Thrilling 32 bracket contest. And we will find that out next week, obviously, because we'll find out both winners. We'll find out what the number one coasters were, and we will also find out the full top 50 Wood and the top 50 Steel rankings, which is maybe the most exciting part of that show next week, because we finally get to see, all these rides that went head-to-head over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we finally get to see just how close they were in the overall rankings, because you look back at matchups like Voyage El Toro, and you look back at matchups like Outlaw Run and Lightning Rod, and Wildfire and Lightning Rod. Look, and Mystic Timbers, Phoenix. These are all good examples. Twisted Timbers, Steel Vengeance, Twisted Timbers, Iron Rattler. All these matchups that were very, very difficult to pick. We find out how close all those rides were next week when we reveal the top 50.
And we determine what coasters go on the belt.
That's right.
For the next year, baby. You're on the belt. We're going to be taking this to all the parks, to all the events we go to. The belt's going to be there, so you can take pictures with it, because everyone wants a piece of the championship, as they say. So next week, Danny, I think it's by far my favorite part of the entire Thrilling 32. Not so much the champions. That's always fun. Not to see who wins the bracket challenge. That's always fun. But to finally get to see those top 50s,
get the full rankings. This is why we tell you. This is why we give you guys the opportunity to rank 75 coasters, so you can decide the whole top 50. We get to, and we also get to find out who the first few coasters not in the brackets. 33, 34, 35. We have to find out who just missed out, because we talked a lot about some rides that were in last year and were not in this year. So we get to find out where some of those rides maybe came in as well. So always a lot of fun stuff going on in that last show, and that comes to you 1 week from today when we wrap up the Thrilling 32.
So as always, I am Andrew Barchak from Chicago, Illinois.
I'm Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, Ride Warriors.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.